Are we ready?
Good to go.
All right, this is Jacqueline Goldstein, curator at the Jewish Museum of Florida-FIU, and today's episode of Thursdays at 3, we are joined by two internationally renowned artists, Beatriz Chachamovits and Lauren Shapiro, both from Miami right now. Wave, say hello. Lauren, we need a wave from you. So I guess I'll start. First of all, I want to say thank you to Dan and Merle Weiss. They are sponsors of this series, and so it was a pleasure to have them with us today. And let me tell you a little bit about Lauren and Beatriz. I first met them last year. They both have their studios at the same location, House Art Complex, which was fortunate for me. And we currently have their pieces up and exhibit here at the museum in an exhibition called Environmental Art, Fragile Beauty. And both of them are going to talk to us today about their work, with the environment and, everything what they do and who they are. I'll give you a little bit about Beatriz. I guess we can start with you, Beatriz. Wave again, everybody say hello. So Beatriz is an environmental artist and educator, originally from Sao Paulo in Brazil, and now from Miami. And her work renders tangible the decline of the coral reef ecosystems and the role humans play in it. And she can tell you about the piece that we have up actually in the museum right now. With her work, her intention is to share the majestic beauty of at-risk marine ecologies, as well as the appalling rate of destruction. She works with monochromatic ceramic sculptures and drawings to highlight the unique shape, form, and texture that exists in the underwater world. Beatriz is also an author and illustrator, and one of her books that I'm desperate to get is it's a handbook of marine fishes and other aquatic marvels. It's in Portuguese right now. It was published in Brazil, but hopefully we can get some more of those published. And Beatriz, I'd like to go to you directly now and tell us a little bit about your work. First, tell us about the piece you have up at the museum.
All right. Hi, everyone. Lovely to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Okay, so the piece that I have at the museum, it's called To Kill with Water. And it's a piece that has a performance component to it. I made these sculptures out of air dry clay. It means that it doesn't go in the kiln and you don't fire it. So once you add water to it, they can melt. And so I did all of these scenarios and these kind of coral landscapes inside of these fish tanks. And the idea is that I talk about them to create a sense of understanding of what ocean acidification is, which is a phenomenon that is really affecting our reefs here in Florida and everywhere in the world. So once I pour water into these fish tanks, which is a performative component, and it happened during the opening and a little bit before, these sculptures starts to melt instantly. And as a little bit of time passes, what was once this majestic, beautiful coral reef becomes this slimy mutt inside of the fish tank. And that's actually what is happening with ocean acidification. It is the change of pH inside of the ocean that affects calcium-based organisms. So what happens is that the pH of the water is becoming more acidic, and not just these organisms cannot build their skeletons and their shells anymore, but they are starting to melt because of the acidity inside of the ocean. So the work is very on point onto what is happening. I wanted to give a visual component and a visual understanding of what is happening inside of the ocean with this specific phenomenon, because I've been talking about coral bleaching, I talk about plastic pollution and coral diseases and a bunch of things that are affecting the reef, which is not just one thing, it's like a layer of gigantic, massive things. But for this specific work at Fragile Beauty, it's about ocean acidification. And I've been working with coral reefs for the past 14 years. I've been studying them. I dive to see them. I exchange a lot of information with scientists to understand these diseases and phenomena that are affecting them so that I can talk about them in my pieces and in an installation form. Recently, a lot of my work is installation based, and there is always an interactive component, even if it's just me performing or if it's people being part of the work itself. And then let me share my screen here just to show everyone a little bit of what I've been doing. Give me 1 second. Sorry, you guys, I'm still kind of new here and I forgot how to do that. Where is it? Here we go. And then I want to know if you can see the image, just like do a thumbs up. Jackie, Lauren, can you see the image?
Looks good.
Okay, so this is one of the first installations that I've done here in Miami. It's called Carcast and talks about coral bleaching and plastic pollution. This is all ceramic based. It's all hand built. There is no casting elements here. And then you can see plastic bottles, you can see tampons and toothbrushes and phones and like all these elements that are trash elements that relates to our behavior in our society, how we do things nowadays, because we throw everything out and we believe that it disappears, but it actually goes to the ocean and it just stays there forever. So this work talks about this beauty and this like so enchanting forms and textures that the corals have, but at the same time it shows them completely white because they're dead. So a lot of my work has this undertone of this extreme beauty but this extreme sadness to it, because witnessing the demise of one of the most biodiverse ecosystems in our planet is super sad. So when I talk about them and I bring that intention forward, this is kind of how it works for me. And then recently in the beginning of this year, I did this installation that it was a punch in the stomach for me, but it was a behavioral experiment where I filled this room with over 2,000 individual sculptures of unfired clay of pieces that resembles corals that are from the Florida Reef Tract. And I invited people to enter the room. And the installation got completely annihilated in 30 minutes. And for me, it just served as a gigantic mirror into what we're doing with our ecosystem in a very small space, but regarding the whole planet and how our behavior with destruction is very part of how we move about the planet, and to highlight that idea that we are part of it, and without us there's nothing that we can save or we can restore, or all of these things that a lot of environmentalists are working for now. And then during this exhibition, a lot of people that were there kind of wanting to destroy and find things that they could step on, but a lot of people also didn't enter the room because they didn't want to take part of it. And then actually in the end of the installation, this little girl tried to find all the pieces that were left so she could build something new. And then in that particular situation just gave me extreme amount of hope, because when we talk about children and how they view the world and the world that we're living for them, that is the utmost marvelous thing that I could ever expect from this installation that was destroyed so intensely. And you can see that by the image of what it was and what it became. So teaching kids
That's
is really
amazing. That's
Jackie.
amazing. The girl at the end wanting to rebuild. That is amazing.
Yeah, and it just gives us a little bit of a lead onto how we can behave in the future, and giving those tools to kids And that's something that it really relates to my work, because I've been teaching children about the reef and creating workshops with them where they learn how to make coral sculptures. And then afterwards, we together create this gigantic mandala with all of their sculptures. In that sense, because planting the seed of love for corals and for the ocean, which is hidden in an unknown space to us, even though we're here in Miami and the coral reef is in our backyard, a lot of people really don't know corals and don't understand that they're actually animals. They're not plants, they're not minerals, they are actual animals who has mouths, who, digests and create this magnificent, gigantic structures that can be seen from outside of the planet. And so teaching kids is the thing that makes me feel hopeful and creates this connectivity in between learning and teaching and loving the reef and passing the baton to the kids that really get into it, and hoping that with that knowledge and that love, they'll do something about it in the future, which I don't know, I think that's really important in the work that I do. And then afterwards, by the way, this installation is called Into the Great Dying, Steps We Take, which is part of a trilogy of installations that I'm doing that are all interactive. This is the first one. And then the second one was at Faena Art Project Room. This was the biggest installation I've done up to date. This room is gigantic, and it took 13 tons of sand to fill it. It was insane.
Wow.
And then the idea for this one that is called Into the Great Dying, but it's called Waters We Share, is to understand that that disconnect that is happening inside of the ocean, it's also part of us, and that disconnected feeling that we have towards nature, and how, all of us are connected through water in some way in the whole planet. And so as you walked around this space filled with sand, your footsteps would, change the landscape. And also, while you were getting close to these separated islands, underneath the sand, there were slabs of unfired clay. And as you stepped, you would feel cracking underneath your feet and not understand what's happening, and feeling that sense of displacement. Because in the end, I want to make people feel something for the reef and understand that that's so important for us as, a collective that inhabits this planet.
Did you get, what kind of feedback did you get from visitors?
On this one?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are so many different feedbacks. There are some people that were just enchanted by being able to, walk around this place. There are people that were really appalled by the sense of displacement that the space caused to them, because there was also in the space, there was this sound component that my partner, that is a musician, created for this installation. And it went back and forth from feelings of bliss and amazement to this very intense feeling of kind of scratchiness and falling out of place. And so it was depending on the time that you entered the installation, if you were listening to the bliss movement of the sound, it gave you that magical feeling. But if you stayed long enough to understand that shift, then the music and that sound component really made you think about the way that we walk the planet. And that's a lot of what I heard about this installation was how they were seeing their track inside of this place and changing the landscape and making them think about the way that we walk around the planet and our natural inhabitants. If you're inside of this space and you feel that once you're back in nature, it might be very possible that you're going to be more careful about where you're stepping and where you're throwing and how you're behaving in the natural world. So this is just a couple of images of different views of this installation. And just by the way, all these pieces that are here, they are inspired by endemic species to the Florida Reef Tract and Bahamas and Caribbean. So all the species that are here, they are part of our ecosystem, and a lot of them are in peril or even extinct, like the pillar coral that we find them still, but they're so far away from each other that they can't reproduce anymore. So the only way that we have pillar corals in nature right now here in Florida is to reproduce is in the tanks where people are doing.
The next
I
thing,
think,
our friend,
I think someone is with their mic on.
Please mute yourself if you've just joined us. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, in this installation, all these islands are filled with plastic and filled with trash elements that are all made in clay and hand built. And then after that, I did this installation for the No Vacancy Project in Miami Beach at the Esme Hotel for Art Week that talks about, it's a new iteration of Carcass, the first image that I showed, but in a different feel, because a lot of this red color is very new for me. I've never used that hue in my work, but it was really great because it gave the idea of temperature rise and how the temperature rising affects corals and what is coral bleaching in that sense. When corals get stressed and kick out the algae that are inside of them, that gives them their color, and that's why they become white. Their tissue becomes completely transparent and we can see their skeleton that are white. So this is a lot of the work that I do is very based in this knowledge and the scientific knowledge of what are the diseases and what is happening with the corals, so that I can portray them and talk about them in the light that makes sense for us to understand what's really happening in here. And then this is just very close shot of the textures and the shapes that I create with the clay. And then I'm going to show everyone just a couple of images of what we're doing at the Jewish Museum, because I feel it's important to show the degradation and what happens when I put water inside of these fish tanks. So here is one, like I made 3 of them, and here's one of them intact. And then during the opening, I did a performance and I filled the fish tanks. And as I was filling the fish tanks, the sculptures were already losing mass. And like, it was very visual to see that, you know, dissolving piece. And then once I filled it, it kind of looked like this. And then in the end, it just became these mounds, which actually, when you dive in a dead reef today, where people don't tell you it's a dead reef, it kind of looks like this. It has a little bit of pieces of corals, but it really looks like this muck, you know, like algae overgrowth. And, you know, there's no vibrancy, there's no colors, there's no fish mass, there is no species at all. It's just a cemetery. And this is still on view at the Jewish Museum until April. And I'm not exactly sure the date, April 3rd. But I think that's it, everyone. Just wanted to do like a quick showing of what I've been doing last year, which is all of these projects were 2022, and thinking about what's going to happen this year, which I invite you all to attend my exhibition at the MoCA of North Miami on July 5th, that I'm going to be opening the 3rd installation of Into the Great Dying. That's going to be called Roles We Play, and it's going to talk about coming together as a community to restore the coral reef. Thank you.
You're welcome. I have a quick question for you. What the material that you're using to create these corals?
So for the Jewish Museum or for the other ones?
I mean, we could start with ours. That was the
For
last.
the Jewish, yes, for the Jewish museums, they're all air dry clay. So it's a type of clay that doesn't fire. And then all the other installations is ceramics.
Very interesting. How come you decided to not put any ceramics with the one at the museum? Is it just to literally show the entire ecosystem devolving with, it's so intense.
Yeah.
If you haven't
Yeah,
had
because
to see it, you have to see it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I want that visual intensity to really show the light, you know, shine a light on the problems that we're facing underwater, because they're really dire. They're very intense. And, you know, if you can't visualize it and if you can't connect to it, you won't be able to understand it or save it or love it. And, you know, as humans, we only care about what we love. So I want people to love the reef.
it's actually haunting. I mean, it's really haunting to see that, to see the beauty in one case, and then the next case you're seeing the devastation, and it's haunting, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I have a track record of destroying my own work to show that, which I actually like, because it's so powerful, you know? Yeah.
I mean, it's haunting. Let me get us Lauren, and then we're gonna do question and answer for everybody. Lauren is also a visual artist and an environmental advocate, also in Miami. Her work experiments with art's possibility to affect change. And she also strives to cultivate a broad awareness of our environment. Lauren has worked alongside scientists, architects, and filmmakers with her work and her research, and she's able to merge all these research with crafts, science, technology, all to basically, you know, like Beatrice as well, document the disappearing ecosystems. And in Lauren's words, which I'll let you go to, but she said something really interesting to me, documenting disappearing ecosystems as sculptural ceramic archives. So with that, explain that to me, Lauren, because that is just amazing.
Sure.
It's simple, but it's amazing sound. Yeah.
Sure.
Tell us about the
So,
ceramic archives of your work.
The ceramic archives sort of, well, I guess I'll back up a little bit and give you guys a little bit of a background of who I am and what I do. I come from an academic background, so I've studied ceramics for 15 years. I've been doing it professionally for 10. I did my Master of Fine Arts at the University of Miami, where I became a master mold maker. So that's my special superpower is making molds. As well as, you know, other things. And what I was studying during my thesis was a lot of geometry, mostly geometry that you would source from nature. So I'm really interested in the architecture of nature, with systems and structures and what holds things together and what causes them to fall apart. And so after visually studying these types of geometric natural systems, when I finished my degree, I turned my vocabulary onto basically the lens of Miami and my hometown. I'm from Florida. I'm a Florida born artist. I spent a lot of time, snorkeling. I can remember a time where there were corals here, where there was a lot of wildlife, and things have changed a lot. And since being down in Miami, when I finished, I really wanted to basically explore those natural systems in Florida and communicate that to the public. So I will share my screen and give you a little chronology of my work leading up to the show at the Jewish Museum. So can you all see that?
Yep.
All right. So when I really first started diving into ecology, I was super fascinated with terrestrial ecosystems, more so plants and ecology. And so this was a project I did at Fairchild Tropical Botanic Garden. It was funded through a Wavemaker grant from Locust Projects that I applied for, which was a community-based activation that would be free and open to the public. And I wanted to, being a ceramicist and studying ceramics for so long and trying to keep things from cracking and breaking and falling apart, I wanted to experiment with the material itself, since it's such an earthy material, and to really bring people into the process by letting them touch the clay. I'm also a teacher, so I've been teaching for over 10 years and more before that with kids. And so I've really seen people light up when they touch the material. And so this piece is called Temporary Terrains. It was built with unfired clay with the community. Basically, I went into the Garden of Fairchild. I talked with the scientist. I learned about the different types of overlapping ecosystems of the plants that share basically a domain here in Florida. And I cast all of these textures in silicone molds. And then through a process that took the place over a weekend, here's some of the casting. Also, people at Fairchild were looking at me like I was crazy, like slapping the silicone on plants, like, what are you doing? But that's how I made all of these different types of textures. And then through a series of workshops, we constructed sort of a post and lintel system over the entrance of Fairchild so that people that would walk through would see it. And I spy a Beatrice here around the top left. Funny enough, when Beatrice moved to Miami, she was from Brazil, and I had just gotten back from a residency in Brazil. So she was getting into the bakehouse, and I had just gotten back from a rainforest residency. And when I found out she was doing work about coral reefs, it was really funny because I was about to take on a really large project with a scientist colleague of mine in California. but I'll get to that in a second. This was a secondary installation that I did at Fairchild using ceramic tiles, pressing leaves into molds with the community to build the site-specific sort of piece in the rare plant house and tropical conservatory. And these are the workshops that we did. It was during COVID, so it was, extremely challenging. We had to make sure it was outdoors, socially distanced, but I think people were really grateful for the opportunity to kind of touch something and be something part of something greater than themselves. So these are some of the workshops where people helped press leaves into the silicone molds, where I later added them to the sculpture outside. And this was the final result. So it's 54 ceramic tiles. These are actually fired with textures sourced from Fairchild Tropical Garden, built by myself and the community. And this was a Night Arts Challenge grant, funded by the Night Arts Challenge.
Is it still up? Still on view?
It was in Fairchild. Now it's in New York. It's looking for a permanent home. So if anyone is interested, let me know. It would look really great on a veranda somewhere.
It's beautiful, beautiful.
And this is I've also done a lot of video work. So especially for the projects that are participatory, whenever I have a budget to do so, which is why these grants are so great. Because really the spirit of the work, even though the final result is beautiful and it's great, it has a finite shelf life. And so the films really highlight the community activity and the people that help to make the work come to life. So that's been really important to work with filmmakers to document these different types of projects that I do. And this was a monumental project I did at the Bakehouse Art Complex called Future Pacific. This was a project that was funded by a National Science Foundation grant from my colleague based out in California, who's an amazing marine ecologist. This was my first foray into coral reef ecosystems about 6 years ago. She saw the work I was doing in the Amazon and with the unfired clay and the participatory projects in ecology. And she asked if I would like to join her as her outreach component for coral reef ecosystems. And so this was the result. It was 7 monumental structures. It was, I recycled and reclaimed 15,000 pounds of unfired clay. I mixed mason stains in there and added different colors, which was interesting because as the corals, people basically came, pressed corals into silicone molds of skeletons and attached them to the structures. And over time, they started to bleach and dry and crack, but they stayed attached to the frame. So it was kind of like a lost city of Atlantis sort of feel. And this is a lot of the volunteers who helped build the structure. There's Beatriz too, over there on the right. But this was also during COVID, which is an enormous challenge. And it was over 300 volunteers, which was super tricky to keep everyone socially distanced and keep the institution safe to be able to build this project. Here's another view. Again, a monumental sort of project that was really about the community effort to sort of build these installations. While the workshops were happening, people were having conversations about reefs. Like some people were from Florida, some people were not. And I think those conversations were really kind of the crux of this project, especially during a time where people couldn't connect. So even though it was sad for me because not a lot of people got to come see it, there's a film that makes it live on, and also the people that participated were super grateful. And here's a close-up detail of those corals and skeletons. So all of the molds were cast from coral skeletons. Originally, I was supposed to go out to my colleague's research site in French Polynesia first and cast the Pacific corals, but what ended up happening is a lot of scientists locally from the University of Miami Rosenthal School, FIU, and just people from all over like local areas that had specimens, they loaned them to me so that I could cast them for this project. And so this was sort of what the structures looked like up close. And it was cool because people would come into the exhibit and they'd be like, oh, that's my coral, that's my section, that's my section. So I think with these projects, it's super important to kind of, when we go to museums and things, we look at an artwork and there's sort of a separation between ourselves and the work, but there's something really magical about being a part of the process that makes people feel so much more connected to the art and also to the environment.
I was just going to say the immersive element to the installations are unbelievable. I mean, just
I think that was
itself,
the beauty of having a willing institution and a budget can really make wonders happen. But I think also too, with a lot of these unfired installations and the work that I'm moving into now with fired pieces, it's a way to kind of experiment with scale and the enormous amount of labor that it takes. I mean, it was 300 people over a course of a month and a half to build. And it took about a day and a half to destroy it. And then again, all of this clay was recycled. So it was 15,000 pounds of clay and like 10 garbage pails. And eventually over the course of 3 years, I managed to like get rid of all of it and give it to artists. Like I think Beatriz used it for her Art and Culture Center project. Another artist here used it for a piece that he produced for the Aspen Climate Conference. I gave some to students, and I finally got rid of the last of the clay like a month ago. So it only took 3 years. Couldn't throw it out. What kind of environmental artist would I be throwing away the material that I recycled? And then here's a shot of all of the volunteers that came and helped build the project. And there's a video that exists online. It's called Future Pacific. It's really beautiful. It was shot by my friend and filmmaker, Shireen Rahimi. He's an amazing underwater diver filmmaker. Been fortunate enough to work with on my projects. I'm going to start getting into the technology now because that's the pieces of the Jewish Museum involve technology. So after Future Pacific, I went out to the research site with my colleague in French Polynesia, and I met a lot of the scientists at Gump Research Station, which is funded by Berkeley University on the island of Moorea. And a lot of these scientists, in order to measure biodiversity, they use a technique called photogrammetry. Photogrammetry is when you photograph an object from multiple vantage points, and then you can stitch it together in a 3D model. And then from those 3D models, what I do, I've been using a process in my ceramic casting work where I use CNC technology, 3D printing, to basically take the models of the textures instead of physically taking the silicone molds, which can be very extractive. Even if it's just leaves or skeletons, I wanted to find a way to make a less extraction-based texture sampling. And this is where we're getting to the sculptural ceramic archives that I was referring to, Jackie, is to basically take the scans of the coral ecosystems and then basically create a mold from the scan and then cast it. And that's what this project was. This was a piece for No Vacancy 2 years ago on Miami Beach. It actually won the Jurors' Choice Award. I got first place, good for me, which is my big win, but this is what it looked like. And it was in front of the Royal Palm Hotel South Beach, where it still stands today because they own it now. And these are all different tiles of a coral reef ecosystem in Hawaii that was decimated by a hurricane in 2018. So it's a sacred site to the Hawaiian people. It's at a monument that I cannot pronounce, so I'm not going to, but it's one of their sacred sites that only the Polynesian people can go and scientists. And so these archives exist through scientific databases. So on the top left, it's called Site R16 Transect 1, which is the title of the work. And this piece was a sculptural ceramic archive of this reef. And you can see on the top right, this was a CNC prototype from the 3D model. So basically we took the model, which is here, we unraveled it and stretched it across tiles to then cast. And that's the mold in the very bottom. So this is a massive mold, but this is the process of how it was created. And there is the sculpture. And then there's also a video of this that exists online. You can see some of the process of how it was made. Being out at the research site in Polynesia was amazing. And then getting into the works of the Jewish Museum, I'm going to get a little bit into the process of how those were made, and then I'll show you the photos. Basically, the models are made and they're 3D printed and then cast. So you can see here a little bit of the process. This is a sculpture that incorporates these different elements where I'm hand building with the slip cast elements from the molds. This is me taking a photogrammetry scan on site in French Polynesia. The right-hand side, 3D printed elements from those corals. This is the digital model. And on the bottom right is the cast ceramic corals from the mold. And so these become kind of the building blocks with my work. And then I'm going to just show you real quick the photos of the Jewish Museum pieces. Can you guys see that? Can you see the lamps? You can see? Great. So these are the pieces that are featured at the Jewish Museum. This was like kind of a commissioned work for the museum. When I stepped into the museum, I was completely, if anyone watching has never been to the museum, it's an incredible architectural masterpiece. It's got gorgeous stained glass windows that are shaped like arches, and the whole place is filled with this most beautiful light. And so I wanted to create sculptures using the 3D printed elements of the corals. So all of these here are sourced from scientific databases that have been cast in molds, and they have a light element. So they glow. And also it was around the time of Hanukkah, so I figured, Festival of Lights. And with design, working more in the realm of design, especially with architecture, I've been embracing more of the functionality of ceramics and thinking about how these can become just beyond sculptures and have a function. So these sculptures are actually lamps. And what's kind of cool about them is this was an experiment for me, Jackie. I don't know if you know this, but I'd never cast in this type of porcelain before. So I didn't realize how translucent they were. So they actually have a translucency and they glow, which was a nice little surprise for me. So thank you.
Yeah, they're
And
unbelievable.
here's one of the models. You can see the model that was scanned. You can see it in here, these little kind of like finger shaped things. Possilopora coral. A lot of these are Pacific corals, but I've begun taking my own scans locally, which has been really exciting. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
I
For
feel like, I'm still back on the ceramic archives and it's such an accurate description of what you do, the science and the art combined. So when you created this art, is it like, are you actually creating an archive of the different corals around the world with your ceramics, and you're gonna actually create an archive?
So that is one of the goals that I'm working on. The same ecologist that I've been working with corals, we're doing another NSF funded project called the Career Grant that she won. It's basically it's interfacing with young scientists, like students of science, PhD and grads that are studying different types of ecosystems. Hers is mostly now in the rocky intertidal, which is organisms that live between the land and the sea. They live partially in the air and partially underwater. And so with this project, I want to work with all of her students and source all of their scans from their research and create a database where we can actually share scans, source them for artwork that will be completely open source. Because one of the really beautiful things about science, it's for the people. And a lot of what Nissa, my colleague, teaches is that her research, she makes it all open source so that people can build upon her research. She always lectures to her students not to be kind of, private about the work that we do. And in art, it's the same way, right? There's a lot of proprietary information, and, whenever there's money involved, people get a little weird. But one of the beautiful things about these sort of grant funded projects is about sharing and being open source. And so it's a nice break from the commercial side of my art practice. I can even show you one of these in motion. Can you see this guy? So this is a 3D model of one of the corals that I used in the Jewish Museum. It's this branch here. This is a Montipora coral. For a sculptor, I mean, what's really cool about these sort of scans is you can blow them up large, you can make them small, you can modify them. So, and without any extraction. So there's no corals being harmed at all in this casting process. And it's literally replicating a coral that may not be there tomorrow. So I think about, when making these archives, we're forming the future of these sort of corals, right? Like maybe we have to rebuild them, or maybe we're documenting them and building on the research of others. So that's sort of like the direction that I've been heading in with the scans and the technology.
It's very interesting. I mean, I couldn't think of two more environmental activist artists to have put in my show. I mean, you guys just, when I heard of you and saw your work, it was just perfect for me to, do what we wanted to do, which was show the beauty of the environment also, and have us revel in the beauty, and not it just being like a didactic, the earth is falling apart, but really the earth is beautiful. And this is the research we're doing. And Beatrice, do you have a copy of that coloring book, the science particular one? I mean, it's so cool. You don't have it on you, do you? Oh, you do. All right, you guys are going to be treated to something very interesting. So explain what that is.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
This is a book that I did for children to learn about the ocean, but also have fun while they do it. Because it's a interactive book in the sense that there's a lot of games and play things. So it's in Portuguese, but I'm going to show you what's happening. So the idea is that all of these illustrations talks about the outer form of a specific species of fish. And then the text only talks about the idea and what is this fish? How does it eat? What, biological, sorry, my English sometimes. And then you have to find each element inside of the fish. And always the last element is the next fish that you're gonna look at. So that to show kids the interconnectivity of the ocean and how everything is in symbiosis with each other. And so in this book, one of the 14 fishes is fake, and the kids needs to find out which one it is. It also has, in the end, you can color all of them, of course, like that's super kid friendly in that sense. But then in the end, you have to research and do your own story of this abyssal creature, which is magnificent, and I love him. He's very tiny, and he has the proportions of the teeth, the biggest teeth proportionate to his body in the whole planet, which is super crazy. And then there is also the idea of you drawing your own fish that has the story here. So it's very, very playful, and it's a way also to kids to fall in love with the ocean, learn about it, and also do research from themselves, because all of these little creatures that are here, I don't talk about them. I just tell them to find it, so that if you want to know more about them, you need to do research for yourself. And I have like a lot of information here. This is the curiosity section that talks about curious facts and things about the ocean, and specifically about these fishes. And I also introduce the ocean to the kids by talking about all the types of oceans and the interconnectivity of all of them. We give them names separately, but they're one, right? So we do that. We name things so we can understand them. And I also talk about, how things are in the ocean and how marvelous everything is inside of the ocean that gives all of the life that we have, all of these creatures. And so this is my beautiful, I'm very proud of this book. It's also been adopted by schools in Brazil. People it's in their calendar. They do workshops with the book. It's been prized in like book fairs and for the SDGs in Brazil. So in the informational element of them. So a lot of things have happened with this book in Brazil, and I love it. It took me 3 years to make it, with the amount of research that I did, because I drew all of it and I wrote all of it. So there it is.
I hope we can get it here in the States in English one of these days. You'll have to keep us posted.
Me too. I'm trying. I'm trying.
Beautiful.
It's funny
beautiful.
when you don't own the rights completely, and the company that published owns half of the rights, there is a struggle. But I think if they don't want to bring this one, I'll just make another one about whales or about crabs or, about sharks or rays. There's, many
For
things
sure,
to talk
for sure.
about in the ocean.
I like it.
Thank
I
you for asking about it.
I wanted to leave a little bit of time for questions. Does anybody have any questions?
We have 6 things in the chat box.
All right, you want to read it? Where are they? Chat box. Why can't I? Okay. So I love the art of both artists and advocacy. Yes, we love that. Advocacy. Mazel tov. Looking at you guys are getting lots of mazel tovs. They're beautiful. Does anybody have any questions about their processes, or trying to think of, I'm wondering, Lauren, the ceramic archives, do you think that'll be a global thing that artists will collaborate on, and scientists to actually make a physical database for future study?
The goal for my next project with my colleague is to create a database so that artists can source from the scans. They can make them into whatever they want, but also to share the research of these young scientists that are studying different types of work or different types of ecosystems. It's not just corals, it's intertidal, anything from, it could be like a fish or like a whale or kelp forest or coral reefs or anything. Anything ocean oriented. So her field is mostly a marine ecology. So I would love to build out something like that to connect people, and then it becomes a source for me and my molds and my textures, and other artists can use them, and the scientists get to share, especially these young scientists that are trying to get themselves out in the world are able to connect with artists, because I've done a lot of I've done workshops with scientists as well. Just recently out on the West Coast, I went to the Western Society of Naturalists, which is a convening of all the West Coast marine ecologists, professors, scientists, students. And I did a lecture on my work, and they were all just like, how do we find artists to partner with? And it's funny because I get a lot of artists asking me, like, how do we find scientists to partner with? So there is something there. Art and science really blend very well together. You know, both artists and scientists are always asking questions. We're searching for intrinsic truths. There's sort of this like going out into the field to collect and then coming back to the studio or lab to analyze. There's a lot of parallels between the two, and I just think it's like the most amazing partnership. For me, it's given me access to knowledge and really to sites that I normally wouldn't be able to go to get inspiration or take scans or understand data. And for them, it's a way to visually imagine their work, what they do, and communicate it to the public. It's one of the big things that a lot of their grants ask for, is they need outreach. And rather than just like reading a paper, writing a document, which only the academic community can access, you know, partnering with an artist that thinks a little bit outside of the box has been, I know for them, for my colleague, it's been really beneficial, and it's changed the way that she thinks about things. It's changed the way that I think about things. So, you know, the Sculptural Ceramic Archives is something that I'm spearheading, and I'm sure it'll catch on.
Here's a question in the chat for both of you. Somebody said, what can we do to help save the oceans and bays environments? Please keep in mind that some of us are disabled seniors. So what's your suggestion? Let's start with disabled seniors. Beatrice, you want to go first?
Sure. For me, it comes about thinking on micro actions, thinking on like things that you can take on that won't, you know, disrupt your way of life. If we look at the ocean today, and the thing that we can really work with is the amount of plastic that is there. Even if you're a disabled senior, even if you're a senior, even if you can't go and do beach cleanups, you can change the way you use plastic in your home. You can change what kind of things that you consume, and you can change basically what you're giving your money to. And, you know, make the effort to buy things that are plastic free, or create things, or buy things that are zero waste, or made out of bamboo or metal. You know, like there's a lot of substitutions that we can do in our life that, with the way that we go about, you know, the things that are in our house. I mean, if we look at our kitchen, if we look at our bathroom, a lot of things in there is plastic. The way that we wash our clothes, like there is so many companies today and products and things that are coming to change this. Like, and that's something that I really do, and I really try to make an effort in my house, is to use the less amount of plastic possible. That is something really important. If you have a lawn, don't fertilize your lawn, because your fertilizer will be, you know, washed away in the ocean, and that's something that really affects the ocean as well. So there are really like tiny things that you can do in your day-to-day that will actually and be very helpful. Because if 20 people do it, and then 20 people talk to 20 people, and then 20 people talk to, like, we already have 200 people changing the way that they consume things, and they think about the things that they're consuming and the products that they're putting in their plants. You know, so there are many ways in that sense that you don't have to be autonomous in your body, or, you know, young or whatever, to make a difference. That's I would start from there. Lauren?
For me, I think one of the most powerful things you can do, if you are able to vote, to look into your politicians that care about the environment, that are doing things to prevent some of the things that are detracting from the environment, and research these politicians, not just on a presidential level, but on a civil level, like close to you, like your neighborhood, your district. Sometimes I think, like, I also do a lot of the non-plastic thing. Like like today I went to the store and I had to buy laundry detergent, and she put in a plastic bag. I was like, no, I don't need that. Just carry it out. And like, it kind of like makes me feel better. So it eases my climate anxiety. Small micro action, right? But I think for any sort of major change that's going to slow down the decline, is going to come from the ballot box, 100%. And there's an old adage that says, like, I tried to change the world, but I couldn't. So I tried to change my country and I couldn't. I tried to change my state and I couldn't. I tried to change my neighborhood and I couldn't. I tried to change my family. I couldn't. So all I had left was myself. So I changed myself. And myself, after learning, I was able to change the behaviors of my family, and my family was able to change the behaviors of my neighborhood. And so that's kind of the idea, is sort of inform yourself as to what's happening locally in your environment, right? Like the Bay, especially, like it gets super polluted. You know, I always say nobody wants to live in a barren wasteland. We don't want to live in a polluted, gross, barren wasteland, right? But we have to be aware of the people that are making these decisions, right? There's big sugar, there's people that are dumping, there's chemicals, right? So on a larger scale, it really does start at the ballot box to be able to move the needle and change.
Yeah, that's very true. For me as an immigrant, that's not possible yet, but I feel like
Yeah, but
things
you
will
can
change.
advocate. I mean, the work that you do will inspire people to go do that, right?
Totally,
So as an artist, we're
100%.
able to kind of touch people's emotions, and that's the thing that science kind of lacks. It's not emotional. So that's why people like us are able to kind of bring that emotion in and make you care a little bit. And you know, if you can't vote, like get your family to vote, or get your friend. Have you voted today? Hey, like, see this politician, look at all the stuff they're doing, or, you know, putting, you know, there's a lot of things that you can do in terms of like activism to
Very true.
help make global change.
Do you have any projects coming up together?
I don't think
Not at the
so.
moment. Yeah.
She's working on MoCA. I've got a very large public art commission that's going to be up at the Port of Miami with sculptural ceramic archives. So stay tuned. And I do have an opening at the Art and Culture Center in Hollywood on Saturday from 5 to 8, featuring a lot of these data scans. The show is called Living in Oblivion, and it's all about artists that use research as the basis for their work. So come say hi to me if you're in Florida.
How did you,
Yeah.
this is for both of you, I guess, Lauren, we can start. How did you get involved with coral specifically?
So when I started doing a lot of the basically climate-based research and work, starting really with ecology in Florida, and my colleague, Dr. Nissa Silbiger in California, we've been friends since we were 6. We were actually Girl Scouts together. And so we spent 10 years together, like doing beach cleanups and in the woods and going camping and picking up shells and identifying different types of animals. And we lost touch, and she went off to become this amazing marine ecologist. She went to the University of Hawaii, and now she's the one that's doing a lot of these, running a lot of the coral reef research out of California. She reached out to me when she saw a lot of the unfired social practice work I was doing, if I would be interested in coming to French Polynesia and learning about corals. And I was like, no, that sounds terrible. So, you know, for me, a lot of the access to the different environment began with scientists, like, you know, the work with Fairchild in the scientific community, going to Manaus in Brazil on a residency in the rainforest and speaking to their scientists and ecologists started to inform the work. So, you know, corals are next we're doing the intertidal ecosystems. You know, I'm open to learning about, I'm interested in the architecture of nature and in systems. So everything is connected. It doesn't matter if it's corals or ecology or intertidal or the icebergs, really. I mean, we're all on one planet. It's all one system, and we have to take care of it.
Cool.
That's my spiel.
That's your spiel. Beatrice, how did you get involved specifically with coral?
I had this mind-blowing experience in Brazil back in 2006. That was a while ago. I was just about to finish my art school and graduate, and I went to this island in Bahia that's called Boipeba, and it's this island that it's in between a river and the ocean. It's super fertile space, and there's corals there. But at the time that I was there, I didn't even know like what corals are. I was just like doodling in my art book. And then this guy approached me and he was like, "Oh, so you're drawing corals?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Have you ever seen them in real life?" I was like, "No, but I've, been imagining and thinking about them and like looking at seaweed and doing, taking a bunch of photos." And then the guy disappeared. 20 minutes later, he comes back to me sitting at the beach in this island with a pair of snorkels and masks. And he tells me, "I'm going to take you there." And I'm like, "Okay, stranger that I've never seen in my life, I'm going to trust you on that." And then, And then this man takes me to see the reef, like, and once we get to this spot, that specific spot that he wanted to show me, he puts in his masks, he looks at me and he says, "Are you ready? Once I dive, you're gonna follow me." I'm like, okay, let's do this. When we dive into the ocean, this guy pushes me in and shoves me inside of this tiny little cave that had coral all around it, and it had like tiny little silverfishes swaying from side to side, and like little, you know, like specks of things, and the corals were alive and shifting and moving, and like, and I was like, oh my God, what is this? Like, what is this? This is the most magical thing I've ever seen in my life. I've never even, whoa, like. And then we spent the whole day going in and out of that cave because I couldn't believe myself. Like, I saw spotted rays, I saw, you know, cleaner shrimps, I saw millions of creatures in this one tiny little cave that had holes in the ceiling, and the sun would come and illuminate and show the colors and reveal. And I was like, I was hooked. I was like, this is it for me. Nobody is talking about this. Why isn't no one talking about this? I'm going to talk about this. And that was in 2006, and I'm still talking about it.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
We've just had such a tremendous feedback on the environmental art show here. I mean, just so many people have been asking me questions, and you know, when I'm thinking of the conversations just simply around your installations, you know, while you're doing the installs, it's just unbelievable. But that's exactly what you set out to do, is spark conversations. So it's a pleasure to be around you two and to see the work. And I'm so glad I could share your work today with our audience here. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. This is
Thank you.
marvelous.
Just one, by the way, all the chat box, Lauren and Beatrice, take a look. Everybody's appreciating your work over there. Thank you, everybody, for playing. I just wanted to, number one, again, thank Dan and Merle Weiss. They make these episodes possible. And I hope you guys join us next Thursday. I'm going to be speaking with two Dutch artists, Margaret Lansink and Renee van Holst. And we had some of their work up here a short while ago. And it's a project, well, I guess you'll have to come back February 16, next Thursday at 3. But you can read about it on our website also, jmof.fiu.edu. But it's a different, it's another episode, different, and we're speaking with the Netherlands. So anyway,
just a quick reminder, this is Nancy. It's actually next Thursday, February 23rd. And this we will record, we have recorded this program, and we will have it available on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. So if anybody missed
today is the 16th. Sorry.
Today's the 16th. And if anybody is interested in, and if you want to, you can share this wonderful talk, it'll be available on YouTube. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren and Beatrice. I appreciate having you guys with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. Thanks for attending. Bye.
Thank you all.